You woke up in a hospital, stepped outside, and there was absolutely no one around. Honestly, Rick's awakening is much worse than anyone else's. People at least knew the beginning of the crisis. But waking up in a hospital with no clue about anything could genuinely drive a person insane. So, do you think Rick Grimes was right? Before we answer that, stop the video right here, head down to the comments, and write down whether he was right or wrong so we can build a genuine discussion space. I jump right into the topic. Please subscribe and hit the like button. We are talking about the Walking Dead universe. Zombies and stuff are just the excuse. The real issue is people. Every TWD viewer knows the real problem isn't the walkers, it's the humans. And right at the center of this wheel is a man stepping out of that hospital room in Atlanta with a cold python in his hand, Rick Grimes. The question is clear. Was Rick Grimes right? Everything started the moment he woke up in that hospital room. He saw that the world was over, that flesh-eating Walking Dead were roaming outside. Shock, of course. But Rick's real problem wasn't bewilderment, it was justice. I'm not talking about the very first second he woke up. Obviously, he was in shock and he should have been grateful he wasn't dead. The man was a former sheriff's deputy. Law, order, and the urge to protect and serve were baked right into his marrow. What was he doing in the first few days? He went down to Atlanta, tried to save people, and tried to reach Morgan on the walkie-talkie. Here is the first major breaking point. People told him, "Are you stupid? The outside is a hellhole, and you still chasing rules?" But Rick was right, because it was the only way he could survive. The only way to keep his sanity at that moment was to keep acting like a small-town sheriff under the rules of the old world. When he got trapped inside the tank in Atlanta Square, if Glenn hadn't come and rescued him, how smart was Rick's initial move? It was complete suicide. But that suicide mission triggered his leadership qualities. Let's fast forward quickly. We're focusing on the flow of events. They escaped Atlanta, set up camp. What happened there? Shane showed up. Shane was Rick's closest friend, but he lived by the law of nature, not human rules. Actually, if not for the Lori situation, Shane's method made a bit more sense. The strong survive, the weak die. He would have done anything to protect Lori and Carl. Rick, on the other hand, kept saying, "We are not killers, we are survivors." So, who do you think was right, Shane or Rick? Shane argued that when you're trapped among zombies, humanity is a luxury. Was he wrong? No. But Shane's problem was that he couldn't control his emotions. Rick, meanwhile, tried to manage the group with a cool head. At that time, Rick was right because the group wasn't ready to become savages yet. People needed a shared morality to stay together. When I say the group wasn't ready to become savages, just look at the difference between how walkers were killed in season 1 versus the final seasons, and you'll understand. They left the woods and came to Herschel's farm. By the way, the story is moving fast, yes. We could go into more detail, but it's better to focus on the result, because if we start talking about Rick leaving the camp to go after the bag of guns and all that, we'll be here forever. This place is a turning point. There seemed to be peace on the farm, but actually everything was ready to blow up like bombs. Herschel was keeping walkers in the barn because he still believed they were human beings. What did Rick do? He threw Herschel's idealism right in his face. Yet, he still believed there were rules to follow. This is Herschel's farm. Things go his way if we want to stay here. The person who forced that barn door open and showed them the truth was Shane, and he was definitely right. Rick was no longer just an old sheriff. He was the commander of the new world. Now, how did Lori's pregnancy and the uncertainty of the baby's father affect Rick during that period? Rick knew. It was probably eating him up inside. But what did he do? He said, "This is my child." He could have suffered a total emotional breakdown over the baby. He didn't. Well, actually he did. Partly because of things like Lori's death. To keep the group together, he had to stay standing. Actually, if you're gonna examine Rick Grimes in two different phases, there's Rick before killing Shane And Rick, especially after Shane and Laurie's death, when he became a completely different person. The farm burned down, they hit the road, and they found the prison. To me, this is the exact place where Rick Grimes completely changed and said, I'm no longer the good cop. They cleared the prison. Inside, they encountered the prisoners. When the prisoners told them, this is ours, Rick tried to find a peaceful resolution first. They cleared the prison. Inside, they encountered the prisoners. When the prisoners told them, this is ours, Rick tried to find a peaceful resolution first, though not without a reason, since that long-haired guy tried to kill Rick and suffered the consequences. He eliminated some of them, because he could no longer take risks. Walkers outside, prisoners inside, the risk margin had to be zero. Do you think his attitude toward the prisoners in the prison was just to ease his own mind, or was it the only way to survive? The answer is simple. It was the only way. Democracy and all that crap only works inside a group. You can't set up a parliament in a place where you're smashing skulls with a shovel. Rick might have realized this a bit late, in my opinion. Laurie dying in childbirth broke the man. Carl having to shoot his own mother. Rick lost his mind for a short while. He started talking to imaginary people on a telephone. What happens when a group leader has a crisis? Either they scatter or they wait for someone else to lead them. The prison looked like a quiet place, but the governor came. That war with Woodbury. Rick didn't want to fight. At first, just like at the farm, he looked for a peaceful path. He sat down at the table with the governor. The governor was an utter psychopath whose only goal was to destroy them. Remember the scene where Hersh's head was cut off during the governor's attack in Rick's eyes? Up until that moment, Rick probably still held a piece of old world human inside him. Herschel's death burned that piece completely to ashes. There was no longer a man named Rick Grimes. There was only a survival machine that looked like him. The prison fell. The group scattered in all directions. They walked through forests and roads with empty stomachs. Those scenes with Carl and his father. Rick had a moment where he thought he had completely lost his humanity. When Joe and his gang attacked them, you know what Rick did. Was this act brutality or pure instinct? The rule of anything goes to protect your son kicks in right here. Rick was right. That gang had tried to kill them and do worse things. There was no humanity left there. Rick wasn't a lawman anymore. He was like a super dad. They reached Terminus. Cannibals came out to meet them. They were crammed into a train car. What did Rick say there? They're messing with the wrong people. They blew up Terminus, continued on the road, and finally reached Alexandria. Now, this might be one of the breaking points of the story. A town full of soft people living behind walls, who had never seen a zombie and were still thinking about throwing parties. What did Rick think when he walked in? These people will die at the first gust of wind. And he was right. Was Rick's paranoid and oppressive attitude toward Alexandria's innocent people unfair? It wasn't. Because the town's leader, Diana, and her people were completely clueless about the outside world. And gangs, forget gangs. If they had encountered Negan right from the start, Alexandria would have been flattened, maybe? When he saw Pete beating his wife, what did Rick do? He beat the guy right in the middle of the street, covered in blood, yelling those words, "You have to learn how to live like us." At that moment, everyone thought Rick had lost his mind, and he kind of looked like it, holding a gun, covered in blood, and still wearing his police uniform. But Rick was right, because walls could stop the monsters outside, but they couldn't stop the stupidity inside. Just as they were trying to get things on track in Alexandria, they hit a massive rock, Negan. Negan arrived. With a baseball bat named Lucille. By the way, I actually have that bat at home. I bought it online. It's a great item. Really gets you into character. Anyway, let's continue. Negan stood before the group. He laid down the rules. Half of everything you have is mine. Rick at first thought they could resist. They took to the road in the RV, ambushed some gang members. Everything seemed to be going fine. For years,
The moment viewers found Negan justified and perhaps got the most furious about was that night when they raided Negan's compound. Now, look at things from Negan's perspective. A group of people you don't even know come and kill a garrison of your soldiers in a single night when you haven't done anything to them. And Negan responds by killing just 2 of their men. But looking at it objectively, under normal conditions, if Negan had seen Rick and his group, the situation probably wouldn't have been that different. Maybe Glenn wouldn't have died, but of course, who knows. And that night came. The RV was surrounded, people forced to their knees. That moment when Abraham and Glenn's brains were splattered. Negan tried to completely break Rick. He even tried to make him cut off Carl's arm. There was nothing else Rick could do besides beg. Now, if he should survive, did Rick act like a coward at that moment? Or did he do what needed to be done to keep his son's arm from being cut off? He had to, because if he had kept being stubborn at that moment, Negan probably would have slaughtered everyone and left Rick for last, maybe. Rick appeared to surrender temporarily, but he never gave up. Deep down, he was planning his revenge. While rebuilding Alexandria, he gathered the scavengers, formed an alliance with King Ezekiel's kingdom. All-out war began, war, destruction, losses, Carl's death. This is Rick's ultimate breaking point. Carl left a letter for his father on his deathbed. End the war, build a new world. When he defeated Negan and brought him down, why didn't he cut his throat? While everyone was shouting, kill him. Rick honored Carl's memory, gave Negan's throat a slight slash, and said, keep him alive, throw him in prison, so he can see how we're going to build the new world. Was Rick right? From start to finish, in almost all his decisions, yes, he was right. Because in that world, the soft cannot survive. But in the end, the moment he realized the only way to remain human inside that brutality was to end the revenge, he achieved his ultimate justification. Would you burn your own world down to save someone? Or would you burn inside that fire and plant the seeds of a new civilization? No need to drag it out. Rick has a massive vision ahead of him, Carl's legacy. Just surviving isn't enough anymore. Building bridges, trading, making peace with old enemies is necessary. Saviors, Hilltop, Alexandria, Kingdom, all of them had to learn to live together. Rick gathered everyone around the same table for a peaceful future. A bridge is being built between the Saviors and the other communities. A physical bridge, a symbol of trade, communication, and unification. Was making peace with old enemies stupidity, or Rick's most mature move? It looked like stupidity because the wounds were still fresh. The Saviors hadn't forgotten what they did, and the others didn't trust them either. Unrest began behind the scenes. Some Saviors like Justin started disappearing and returning to their old habits. Maggie was still after revenge for Glenn. Rick said, we will end the blood feud, the law will prevail. When Maggie stormed Alexandria to kill Negan, Rick was there. At that moment, he didn't try to stop Maggie because he understood her pain, but he didn't compromise his vision either. A major accident happens during the bridge construction. Rick finds himself right in the middle of it with his horse. Thousands of walkers, a massive horde, are surging toward the bridge and the construction site. You already know the rest. It was a massive devastation for the group, but it was the only right way for Rick. If he hadn't stopped that horde, neither Alexandria nor Hilltop would have made it to morning. He looked at the bridge, lit the dynamite. I'm gonna find you, he probably thought to himself. So, was he really right? Looking back on that terribly long road from Atlanta to the bridge, was Rick Grimes right? Did he kill people? Yes. Did he act like a dictator? When necessary? Yes. Did he lose loved ones? Lori, Carl, Herschel, Glenn. He sacrificed them all to the ruthlessness of that world. But he was right. Because his goal was never to gain power or sit on a throne. He had a single goal, to remain human. to survive without becoming a savage, without getting lost among those monsters, while preserving human values. Carl didn't make it, but Judith and RJ survived because of him. We've come to the end of another video. I hope you enjoyed it. Don't forget to check out the other theory videos on my channel, subscribe to the channel, and hit the like button. Hoping to see you in the next video. Goodbye.